Another principle of the document is attitudinal change and dispelling myths and misconceptions about disability. Katrina, in highlighting this in the document, it would seem that there are still myths and misconceptions about disability in the wider community. Is this evident in your experience? Can you give us an example and help us understand how we can get past this?
So it happens a lot. As a deaf person myself, I think I need to explain firstly an example. So we need to understand that all deaf people are not the same. There are different levels of hearing involved. Some people might be partially deaf, fully deaf. So there are differences within the community. There's an oral, more verbal community, and there's a full Auslan signing community. So it can be quite confusing in the community. And with the hearing community as well. They might say, oh, this deaf person can speak really well. That must mean all deaf people speak really well. And that's just not the case. Another perspective will be, oh, that person has a cochlear implant. That means the deaf people can hear if they have a cochlear implant. And that's also not the case. So another example is I have 2 hearing aids. And I can lip read quite well. But they might think, oh, I can completely understand. And that's also not the case. And I am a fluent signer. I grew up orally, so I would technically lip read and do my best with speaking, but that's not what's natural to me. And each deaf person has their own identity within the community. And I know, with my experience growing up as an oral deaf person amongst my family, I had 6 siblings and my parents, and I've got 2 older deaf sisters. And we'd go to church every week. And I'd go to church regularly. And you remember that book that had like A, B, C, like year 1, year 2, year 3? I would read through that. And I'd be able to, do my best with keeping up and following that. And I'd try my best to remember where we were up to. But it was different from a hearing person who'd be able to keep up automatically with what's being spoken. And reading through as well throughout the church. Sometimes I would get lost, and sometimes I would feel like I'm catching up and then not realize I've fallen behind. So, for example, Our Father who art in heaven, everybody would be speaking through, and then all of a sudden I'd realize everybody would go quiet, however I hadn't yet finished. And I didn't realize. So that really impacted my childhood. And I felt that gave me, I'm pretty lucky in my community, people were accepting of that, but I couldn't hear. And internally I started to feel like maybe I needed to rebel and not speak at all throughout the service because I was too embarrassed. And I felt as well that my speech is not excellent in comparison to a hearing person's speech. So I rebelled by simply not reading through, and my mum would try and encourage me and say, you speak fine, that's all right. But I still felt like I needed to be careful. Like when a person tells me, you can speak well, I feel a little bit like, ooh, that doesn't make me feel at all, a standout in the community. It doesn't make me feel great. And we have as well, with Auslan, there are some signs and it's really quite expressive. And for me, speech, I feel it's not as expressive as what I can achieve in my sign language. I feel like Auslan allows me to express myself better and more so. And a lot of deaf people tend to feel the same who have the Auslan skills. So the oral signing people will tend to feel that way with speech versus Auslan. And I'm not trying to, downplay other people's preferences as well. So there are other groups who will prefer to try and lip read it and speak. And, if they're comfortable to do so, understandable, and that's up to them. There are multiple groups within our deaf community as well. But I'm the kind of person who feels most comfortable signing. Does that make any sense?
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Beautiful.